I never thought I'd be the center of attention at my own son's high school graduation, at least not like that. The sun was hot that Saturday afternoon, and the bleachers at Lincoln High were packed with proud families and fidgeting graduates. I had driven all night from Camp Lejeune to be here, still in my pressed marine dress blues, medals aligned just right, boots polished to a mirror shine. It wasn't vanity, it was respect. My son, Darius, had worked hard, overcome more than most, and he deserved to see his father stand tall in full uniform, proud and present. I took my seat quietly near the front row of the family section. My presence drew glances, sure. A few respectful nods. I was used to it. But then two private security guards approached, scanning the seats like they were looking for someone who didn't belong. One of them leaned over and asked in a clipped tone, "Sir, can we see your ticket?" I handed it over without hesitation. He frowned. "You're not on the list for this section. This is for immediate family only." I raised an eyebrow. "I am immediate family. I'm his father." The other guard squinted at my uniform like it was a costume. "You'll need to move to the general section. Over there, behind the fence." My voice stayed calm. "This is my son's big day. I'm not going anywhere." People nearby started to murmur, but the guards didn't care. One of them reached toward my arm. That's when it happened. From across the aisle, 6 men stood up in perfect unison. No words. No commotion. Just presence. And every single one of them had the unmistakable bearing of Navy SEALs. The moment they stood, everything changed. The energy in the air shifted, even the birds seemed to fall silent. The 6 of them didn't speak, didn't raise a hand. But their posture, their eyes, it was enough. Each one wore civilian clothes, but the signs were there: clean-cut hair, squared shoulders, the quiet confidence of men who'd seen combat and walked out the other side. A few had subtle pins on their jackets, tridents, unit patches, quiet symbols that didn't need explaining. The lead guard hesitated, his grip still hovering near my sleeve. "Is there a problem here?" one of the SEALs asked, his voice even, quiet, but firm enough to freeze the blood of anyone who knew what it meant. The other SEALs flanked me, forming a subtle but unmistakable wall between the guards and my seat. Not aggressive, just present. A mother nearby clutched her phone, pretending not to record. A teenager in a cap and gown stared, mouth half open. The guard's tone shifted. "We were just trying to follow seating protocol," another SEAL, older and broader, cut him off with a glance. "You're trying to move a decorated Marine out of the front row of his own son's graduation?" The younger guard opened his mouth, then shut it again. No one moved. A school administrator, pale and sweating, came rushing down the aisle, whispering something urgently to the guards. They both backed away without a word. I looked around and caught my son's eyes up on the stage. He gave me a slight nod. Proud. Steady. I thought that was the end of it. But the SEALs didn't sit back down. They remained standing, all 6 of them, arms crossed or hands clasped calmly in front. Like sentinels. Like brothers. People were watching now, but not out of curiosity. There was respect in the air. One of the SEALs leaned in slightly toward me. "He's your only kid?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah. Graduating with honors." He gave the faintest smile. "Then we stand with you." I didn't know them personally, but I didn't need to. There's a bond between service members that transcends branches and years. They must have recognized the insignia on my chest, maybe even served with someone I knew. But in that moment, none of that mattered. They were standing for something bigger. The ceremony went on. Students crossed the stage. Names were called. Cheers erupted. But the 6 men didn't budge. They weren't causing a disruption, just being present. At one point, the principal leaned into the microphone and paused. His eyes flicked toward our section. We'd like to recognize not just our graduates today, but also the families who've sacrificed to support them, he said, voice slightly shaky. In particular, those who've worn the uniform. Applause broke out, thunderous and unprompted. I stood slowly, acknowledging it with a nod. The SEALs stayed beside me like anchors. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the guards had disappeared completely. But the moment wasn't over yet. As Darius's name was finally called, and he walked across the stage to receive his diploma, he paused, turned toward the crowd, and raised 2 fingers in a salute. Straight at me. The salute hit me harder than I expected. I'd seen and given thousands of salutes in my life, on bases, in combat zones, at ceremonies, but this one buckled my knees. My boy, standing tall in his graduation gown, cap tilted slightly to the side, saluting not just his father, but everything we'd fought through as a family. And he held it. Longer than he had to. I stood at attention instinctively, returning the salute with precision, even as my throat tightened. For a few seconds, it was like time froze. The crowd went quiet. Then someone clapped. Then more. Until the entire stadium was on its feet. It wasn't a standing ovation for the school or the staff. It was for him. For us. For everyone who'd ever been told to sit down or move back or keep quiet, and didn't. The principal, caught in the moment, gestured toward Darius. Valedictorian, scholarship recipient, and son of a Marine. Let's give it up for Darius Langston. The applause swelled again, louder this time. When he stepped off the stage and made his way back down the aisle, he didn't go straight to his seat. He walked toward us, toward me. The 6 SEALs stepped aside like a doorway. Darius wrapped his arms around me in front of everyone. Glad you made it, Pops. Wouldn't have missed it for the world, I whispered, gripping him tight. One of the SEALs clapped a hand on my shoulder. You raised a good one, Marine. I looked around at the faces, the silence that had turned into thunder, and the empty space where the guards used to be. And for the first time in a long time, I let my guard down, just a little. The ceremony wound down, and families flooded the field for hugs and photos. But we stayed where we were. Darius hadn't let go of me yet, and I hadn't asked him to. The 6 SEALs stood nearby, not posing for pictures, not seeking attention. Just watching. Protecting. Like a silent unit deployed without orders, only purpose. Eventually, a woman in a school blazer approached us hesitantly. Her name tag read, Vice Principal. I want to personally apologize, she said, eyes flicking toward the path where the guards had disappeared. That should never have happened. I nodded. It didn't have to get loud to get fixed. But thank you. She glanced at the SEALs, lips parted slightly in awe. Are they, with you? I looked at them, men I didn't know by name but now trusted more than most. They are now. She gave a respectful nod, then turned and left us be. We took a few pictures, me, Darius, and eventually, at his request, the SEALs. He stood between 2 of them like it was the most natural thing in the world. Did you know them, Dad? He asked afterward, still beaming. No, I said. But they knew what mattered. Darius laughed. Still got your back, huh? Always, I said. That's the code. The 6 SEALs didn't ask for thanks. They just faded into the crowd when it was time, quiet as they came. But before the last one walked away, he paused and turned back to me. We stand for our own. Doesn't matter where, when, or why. I nodded once. Semper Fi. He returned the nod and disappeared. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. Respected. And never, ever alone. Darius's grip finally loosened, but his eyes stayed locked on mine. There was something different in his expression now, not just pride, but understanding. The kind that doesn't come from words, but from seeing. He stepped back and looked toward the 6 men who had stood beside me like a wall of quiet defiance. "Thank you for standing with my dad," he said to them directly. His voice was clear, strong, the voice of a young man becoming something more. One of the SEALs gave a subtle nod. "He didn't need us," he replied. "But sometimes people need reminding who they're dealing with." They all shared a faint grin, like they'd seen far worse situations, but still knew exactly when to show up. Another stepped forward, offering his hand to Darius. "You earned this day. Don't let anybody steal even a second of it." Darius shook it firmly. The crowd had thinned, but a few people still lingered nearby, watching from a respectful distance. Some clapped quietly. A few parents wiped away tears. Others simply nodded, recognizing the weight of what had just happened. I glanced toward the gates and saw the 2 guards talking with a senior administrator, who looked furious. One of the guards spotted me and quickly looked away. But I didn't care about them anymore. "We took a few photos," Darius insisted. "You earned this just as much as me," he said, standing beside me in his cap and gown, still gripping his diploma. A few kids from his class came over to thank me for my service. A teacher shook my hand and apologized for what had happened. And all the while, the SEALs remained close but quiet, not drawing attention, not asking for it either. Eventually, I turned to them. "You don't know what that meant today." One of them shrugged. "We do. That's why we did it." Then, without another word, they slowly walked away. No goodbyes. No names. Just a silent departure, like smoke dissolving into the wind. But their message was clear. Sometimes, standing up doesn't require shouting. Just presence. And the right one standing beside you. The sun was setting now, casting a golden haze across the field as families packed up folding chairs and leftover balloons drifted lazily into the sky. Darius and I walked together toward the parking lot, his gown rustling in the breeze, my uniform jacket still straight despite the long day. "You ever think something like that would happen?" he asked. I exhaled. "Not exactly. But I've learned to expect the unexpected. Especially when you wear this," I said, nodding down at my uniform. He was quiet for a moment. It wasn't right, what they did. But, it ended right. I looked at him. It ended the way it needed to. Not because I fought back. Because others stood up when it counted. That's what real strength looks like, stepping in when no one asks you to. He nodded, more solemn now, as if the weight of the day had just settled in. At the car, he tossed his cap into the back seat, then turned to me. "I want to enlist after college." I paused. Not because I was surprised, but because I knew what it meant. "You sure?" I asked. He nodded. "Not because of today. I've been thinking about it for a while. I want to be the kind of man who stands up for people the way those guys did for you." I smiled. "Then you already are." He climbed in and pulled the door shut. As I slid behind the wheel, I took one last look in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see one of those SEALs watching from the distance. But they were gone. No names. No glory. Just men who knew the code, and answered when it mattered. I started the engine. And we drove home. Together. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. No name. Inside was a photo. It was the moment Darius saluted me from the stage, taken from the crowd, high resolution, centered perfectly. Someone had captured it and printed it on quality paper. On the back, written in clean handwriting, were 5 words, "He sees you. We all do." No signature. No explanation. Just that. I showed it to Darius and watched his face shift from surprise to quiet awe. "Was it one of them?" he asked. "Had to be," I said. "They wanted me to know it mattered." He nodded slowly, as if storing the moment in his bones. Later that summer, the school made a quiet change. They sent out a letter to all families with an update to their graduation policies. A new line had been added: veterans in uniform will be given priority seating near the front, in honor of their service. No big announcement. No headlines. Just a quiet correction, and a small victory that would outlive the moment. And that's the thing about standing up. It doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it shows up in silence. In presence. In the ripple left behind. I framed that photo. It hangs in my office now, right above my medals. Because in all my years of service, through all the battles and deployments, that was the moment I'll carry with me forever. When 6 quiet warriors stood up. And changed everything. A few years passed. Darius was in his 3rd year of college when the call came in. He'd been accepted into an officer candidate program. I remember the way he told me, trying to stay composed, to make it seem routine. But his voice cracked just enough for me to hear what it meant. "You proud of me, Pops?" I didn't even try to hold it in. "Always have been," I said. "But this is something else." Before he left for training, he visited home one last time. He walked into my study, where the photo still hung on the wall, him saluting me in front of hundreds. He stood there for a long time, just staring. "You think they knew what this would become?" he asked. "Those SEALs?" I replied. "I think they weren't thinking about legacy. They were thinking about doing what's right, in the moment. The legacy came after." Darius turned to me with a rare seriousness in his eyes. "I'm gonna be one of those men someday." "You already are," I said. "But go earn the rest of it. Make the world better, one stand at a time." The day he left, he was in uniform, a new one. Pressed, sharp, full of possibility. I stood on the porch as he got into his car, and before pulling away, he did something I'll never forget. He raised 2 fingers. Held them still. Just like he did on graduation day. Only this time, it was me saluting first. And this time, I was the one fighting back tears. Because standing up doesn't end with a moment. It becomes a way of life. And the ripple continues. It was 10 years to the day since that graduation. I was older now, a little grayer, but still sharp. Retirement had settled in quietly. The uniform didn't come out much anymore, except on days that mattered. Like today. I was sitting in the front row of a new ceremony, in a city I didn't live in, for a reason that made my chest swell more than anything the Corps ever gave me. Captain Darius Langston was being honored. Not for rank. Not for medals. But for leadership, for stepping in when no one else would. He had been deployed overseas when a convoy of civilians came under threat. The reports were vague, intentionally so, but the citations were loud and clear, displayed extraordinary judgment and courage under pressure. Placed himself between danger and those without protection. De-escalated a volatile situation using calm, presence, and command alone. Not a single shot fired. When Darius stepped onto the stage, he wasn't just wearing his uniform, he was carrying years of purpose in his walk. I caught his eye. He smiled. Then, without missing a beat, he turned to the audience, and raised 2 fingers in a quiet salute. No words. No explanation. But I knew exactly what it meant. And to my surprise, from the back row, 3 men stood up. Civilian clothes. Quiet strength. One of them wore a small trident pin. I didn't recognize them by face, but I knew them by presence. And just like that day, long ago, they stood without a word. Because some moments never die. They just echo. Through generations. Through choices. Through the silent promise, we stand for our own. Years later, I found myself on a different kind of field. Not a parade ground, not a graduation stage. This one was smaller, a school playground. My grandson, Marcus, was 8 years old and lining up with his class for a Veterans Day assembly. He'd insisted I come in uniform. Said he wanted to show off the coolest grandpa. I laughed, but I polished my shoes anyway. The kids recited the pledge. A teacher gave a short speech. Then they invited anyone with family in the military to stand and introduce them. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation. "This is my grandpa," he said proudly, pointing. "He's a Marine." One time, people tried to move him from my dad's graduation, but 6 SEALs stood up and made everybody remember who he was. There were a few gasps. A couple teachers glanced at each other, unsure if it was a kid's exaggeration. But I just smiled. Because the story was real, and now it belonged to him, too. After the assembly, a teacher approached me. "That story, it's powerful. Is it really true?" I nodded once. Down to the last salute. She looked at Marcus, who was running with his friends now. He told it like it was sacred. "It is," I said. "Because standing up isn't just something you do. It's something you pass on." As we left the school, Marcus looked up at me. "You think I could be a SEAL one day?" "You can be anything, son," I said, resting a hand on his shoulder. "As long as you remember to stand when it matters." And just before we reached the car, he stopped. Turned. Raised 2 fingers. Silent. Still. Steady. And I returned the salute, with pride deep enough to last a lifetime. Because the uniform may fade. The medals may tarnish. But the code lives on. We stand for our own. Always.